This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Here are 5 stories that we're following this morning, and thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. First, the markets finished up Friday and went slightly up this AM. At the end of the day, the markets are a little bit waiting this week on the inflation data that'll come out Friday in the PCE, the Personal Consumer Expenditures Index, that the Fed watches closely. But again, the markets finished up Friday. They point slightly up today. There's also good news on the Apple front, as Apple had a good month in sales to China, which was unexpected during 2 very down months. Second, the S&P is up about 11.2% year to date. The Nasdaq's up around 14% year to date. Continued to perform well this year. Third, just a quick note on 5 stocks that we watch: Tesla, NVIDIA, Intel, Workday, and Amazon. Tesla's down 27.5% year to date. NVIDIA is up 114% year to date. Intel is down 38% year to date. Workday is down 28% year to date. And Amazon's up 19% year to date. Workday itself, it's used by a lot of companies as an enterprise system, dropped 50% Friday and lower forecasted revenues for the year than anticipated. A 4th story we're following today is a great story in Benzinga about Jeff Bezos and his view of taking big risks in certain areas. And as a company gets larger, having to allocate dollars to big risk areas to hope that some of those areas will become things to double down on. Jeff Bezos has done this better than almost anybody that I know of. So when people say, oh my God, he had a $1 billion failure, he had this failure, that failure, I view it as part of his business plan and part of his business mechanism. We have to do this in some levels at some amount. As you get bigger and bigger, you take bigger shots at the plate. He makes a decision after a while, he did when he ran Amazon. Do we double down in the area? Do we close up the area? Or do we just keep on going status quo in the area? So you see him start some of these retail stores, close them down. One of his big wins, and the biggest one was probably Amazon Web Services, AWS. It now accounts for probably half the profits of Amazon itself. But again, a wonderful story in Benzinga about his approach to looking at these issues. I think it's quite frankly brilliant. The 5th story we're following today is that data is revealing increasing sort of what I would call wealth flight. They used to call it something else, but people moving out of cities to suburbs, and more this divide between wealthy and non-wealthy people, wealthy and non-wealthy zip codes. Goldman Sachs reiterated this point. They essentially said domestic migrants, people moving from area to area, have left the largest cities, with about half moving to metro counties with populations of 250,000 to 1 million. That this shift at the end of the pandemic has just increased. And that's fascinating to watch. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. Those are 5 of the stories that we're following today, and thank you for listening.